Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope everything is good and great and wonderful and fantastic. Everything here is just fine. And I brought the Kindle down because we're going to be talking about books today. We're probably going to be back on the book train for a little while. I've been reading a lot, preparing to write my next story. And I mentioned last time that when I mentioned not last time, I mentioned a few weeks ago that when I finished writing the first book, or the first draft of the first book, that I was going to take a break and read some cowboy novels, and for good reason. One of those reasons is my main character in this series that I'm hoping to someday write carries a revolver. He was a cowboy shooter before the disaster, and I want to have a better understanding of that, of writing the mechanism of using a revolver. Also, I'm trying to, though this is technically fantasy, it is set in a version of Earth in the not too distant future. So that gives me a whole lot of leeway to not have to explain things to the reader, and I can just tell a tight story. And those cowboy western stories are always these really tight, they're not world-changing events. They're a cowboy trying to get a ranch, a cowboy trying to rustle a herd, a cowboy trying to get the girl, or whatever. And that's kind of the types of stories that I want to write. I want to write those fun, quick to read, just tight, energetic stories that aren't, epic in scale, but they're fantastical and they have good character. So I picked Lewis, probably not Luis, Louis L'Amour, and I read 3 of his books in the last 2 weeks. I don't remember all of their names, and I think I've deleted them off my Kindle already. 2 of them, well, all 3 of them were collections. 2 of them were like the sixth. One of them was the Sixth Shotgun. Something about Tuscaloosa or something. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point is, what I found were some really kind of fun stories, and also some of them were really almost experimental. Like he tried to do the little like Columbo twist at the end of like a sheriff story, or do the little like Matlock narrative, like, oh, and so it has to be this because you had the only other shotgun in the whole town or whatever. And it was energetic and fun. The book that I really enjoyed was a 2-part. The first quote book story was really quick. It was just a short little nothingness story. And then the main story was about a cowboy who rides into a valley and wants to set up his own ranch. And he's heard that there's cattle there and that there's a homestead there, so he goes and buys claims to some watering holes, and he finds that these cattle are in an old volcanic crater, and he rustles them out. And what he finds when he gets there is the town is in kind of a turmoil. A guy came into town and is kind of taken over, and he doesn't really have any legal claim, but he pretends to be a good citizen. And so there's a whole bunch of little intrigue and fun. And it's exactly the kind of material I was hoping to read. It's trail riding, cowboys camping out under the stars, eating beans and shooting guns and rustling cattle. And it was really exciting, but it got me thinking. I can remember in the 80s, my aunt reads romance like it's going out of style, right? I remember she signed up to the Harlequin romance novels like Readers Club, and I think she would get something like 6 or maybe even 12 books a month. They would come in these boxes, these crates you'd open up, and there'd be just 6 or 12 new romance novels every single month. And I can remember when their basement flooded in the 80s. They live on a river, and my mom brought home. My mom worked for Apple's. It was a grocery store chain that was local here, and she brought home apple crates, like the wooden little shallow apple crates that they would get deliveries in, and my aunt would line her books up and stack them floor to ceiling, and they all got ruined. So that was a tangent. The point of the story is my aunt read all of the time. Literally always had a book, always had like 3 books in her purse, because she might finish a book while she was, just waiting at the doctor's office and read another one, because if you never read a romance novel, you just pick it. It's like a 2-hour read at most. But I can remember going to the bookstores, and they had, those wire rack spinny thingies that would have just romances, but they also in the 80s still had westerns that way. There was a western rack, and you could spin it, and just like they were the same size, same format, same size, probably the same formula as the romance novels, but they were westerns, and they were all just cowboy stuff. And I really kind of stopped to think about that. That used to be a huge segment, and I think romance novels still are a huge segment. I'm not going to say men don't read them, but I think that women readers really enjoy reading them because they are fast escapism reads about love and life and, whatever. And so romance has always stayed, but the westerns didn't. The westerns went away. They're nothing. I don't even know if there's a western section. There used to be a western section you could go to. And I paused to think, like, what is the new western? Is there one? I might be able to argue that fantasy has replaced the western genre, or even sci-fi. But when you look at the fantasy and sci-fi sections, you don't see fun short stories. You see huge epics. So maybe YA is the new western, because YA books are typically easy reads. You just plow through them, but there's not that simple, like, dime store western section like there used to be. And that means that there's a whole lot of readers who aren't reading because they don't have light, simple material like that that's also escapism and captivating to get to. And so I don't want to say that I can be that person. There's no way. First of all, I'm not going to self-publish, and there's no publisher who's going to touch that kind of work right now. But it's inspired me a little bit in the way that I want to approach my fantasy stories. I don't want them to be these huge, grandiose things. I want them to be these tight little stories, these just fun little adventures. And I've got to figure out how to write that. That's what I'm working on. And so that's why I've been reading Lewis's books, and I'm hoping to probably read some more westerns, or I'd like to find some more modern examples of pulp style storytelling. And we'll see. So, if you want to read some cool westerns, go look up Luis L'Amour. The Pratchett Family I want to read next. It's like a 6-book series or something like that. I heard it's really good. But pretty much any of his westerns, just pick them up and read them. They're just kind of silly fun, honestly. And surprisingly, the other thought that I had, the story that I read about, I don't remember the guy's name. It's all forgettable, right? Rides into town, there's a girl, he sees the girl, I'm going to marry that girl. She ends up not being just the dumb girl who needs to be saved. I mean, in the end, he saves her, but she has a bunch of agency. Like, she does things on her own and commands respect on her own. And she's not just the traditional, like, those cowboy movies that you would see where the woman was just like, oh, I'm so helpless, I'm a Southern belle. She's not that. And so that was encouraging, because these books were written in like the 50s and 60s, Okay, last thought. Thanks for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is didactic. It is an adjective meaning designed, made, or tailored for purposes of education, self-improvement, or ethical betterment. The essential function of art is moral, but a passionate, implicit morality, not didactic. D.H. Lawrence, a British author. Didactic. D-I-D-A-C-T-I-C. Design purposes of educator. Westerns are not didactic, and neither will my books be. That's all I got.